in the interview?
Yes.
You personally drew that for him at that time, is that right?
Yes.
And at this time, we're going to ask the court to that states exhibit S, that states exhibit 21.
Any objection?
No objection.
This will be admitted without objection as State's Exhibit 21.
Do you know where Juan Rosario went after you gave him the items you had dug up from the backyard?
No.
Did you eventually meet him at a different location, or different locations, plural, later in the week?
Yes.
What type of places were those locations when you met him?
Hotels.
Now, did you stay in the hotels all the time?
No.
Where did you stay during the day?
At work.
When you weren't at work, did you ever go back to the Turnstone address?
Yes.
Do you know if Juan Rosario ever returned to the Turnstone address after you saw him leave on the day of the murder?
Just to come pick up the evidence.
After he left to pick up the evidence, did he ever come back to your knowledge?
No.
Did you want to stay at the house?
No.
Were you asked to stay at the house?
Yes.
Why? Who asked you to stay at the house?
Juan Rosario asked me to stay
Why did he want you to stay at the house on Turnstone?
so I could find out what was going on in the community.
While you were at the house on Turnstone, did you ever have any interaction with law enforcement in the community?
No.
Did you see law enforcement in the community speaking to people?
Yes.
Literally walking around the community looking for witnesses?
Yes.
You said eventually you went to one of the hotels and stayed there with the defendant, is that right?
Yes.
Was it just one hotel or multiple hotels?
Multiple hotels.
When you would go to the hotels, how would you get there?
His sister would come pick me up. Elizabeth would pick me up.
Do you remember a specific or any specific hotel that you stayed at?
The La Quinta.
Do you know approximately where it was located?
I think the road is called Conroy.
Okay.
McCoy, I'm sorry. It's McCoy Road.
Okay. Now, you never rented a hotel for Juan Rosario, is that right?
That's right.
Do you know whose name the hotel rooms were being placed in?
His sister's.
I'll rephrase it. No.
Yeah.
Did Juan Rosario ever tell you whose name the hotels were being placed in?
Yes.
Who?
His sister's, Elizabeth Garcia.
Let's talk about Elizabeth Garcia for a moment. Was she in the house on the morning that Juan Rosario came back with blood on his face?
Yes.
Do you know if she woke up?
Yes.
Did you ever see or hear any interaction between Juan Rosario and his sister that morning?
Yes.
What did you see or hear?
I heard her yelling at him, calling him stupid.
Sustain.
Without saying what she said, she was yelling.
Yes.
Did she appear upset with him?
Yes.
Did you observe Elizabeth Garcia take any steps to assist her brother that morning?
Yes.
What did she do?
She drove him away from the house.
Okay. There was a period of days after you made those observations that morning where you were still interacting with Juan Rosario. Is that right?
Yes.
Was there ever a plan to get Juan Rosario out of Orlando?
Yes.
Where was he going to go?
New York.
And what was the plan?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay, based on hearsay.
I can rephrase it.
Rephrase, please, yeah.
Whose plan was it?
His plan.
Did Juan Rosario tell you where he wanted to go?
Yes.
Where did he tell you he wanted to go?
New York.
Did he tell you how he planned on getting there?
The bus.
Was anybody going to help him get to New York via bus?
I was going to help him.
And what was the assistance you were going to provide?
I was going to try to pull some money out of my account to get him there.
So you're going to pay for his ticket?
Yes.
Now, all of this occurred back in September of 2013, is that right?
Yes.
And you already told us that you left and moved to the state of Texas about 2 years after that. Was it 2 years after? When did you leave to go to the state of Texas? If you,
It was in 2015, May 28, 2015.
and is the reason you went, I believe you testified, was because that's where your family was.
Yes.
When you went to Texas, did you find employment?
Yes.
Where were you working when you went out to Texas?
I was the manager at McDonald's.
Were you eventually able to purchase a residence?
Yes.
You living on your own?
Yes.
Did something happen recently in late 2016 when you got in trouble and you got arrested?
Yes.
What did you get arrested for?
Possession of controlled substance.
Now, did you develop a dependence on a controlled substance?
Yes.
That's not the first time that you had a dependence, is that right? On this controlled substance?
No.
How did it start that you developed a dependence on the controlled substance?
I had a slip and fall at work, and I messed up my L4, my L3, and my L1 discs.
In your back?
Yes.
And when you give pain medication for that?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that the substance you had on you in late 2016 was a painkiller?
Yes.
All right. Did you eventually plead guilty to that crime, to possessing that painkiller?
Yes.
So now you're a convicted felon, is that right?
That's correct.
Are you undergoing any treatment for your dependence on the painkillers?
Yes.
Can you just sort of describe your drug treatment right now, what you're undergoing?
I'm in a 6-month inpatient program.
Did you have any felony convictions when this all occurred in September of 2013?
No.
Were you taking any pain medication or narcotics when this occurred in September of 2013?
No.
Not that day at all?
No.
Sustained. Rephrase?
Now, you came forward and gave an interview to Detective Ben Thorpe on June 17th of 2014, is that right?
Yes.
And that was 9 months after you witnessed what you testified about here today, correct?
Correct.
And when you came forward, you were given immunity for your testimony. Is that fair?
Correct.
Is it fair to say that you asked for that immunity?
Yes.
Because you didn't want to get in trouble because you knew you'd helped him?
Yes.
And it's your understanding that you can't be prosecuted for those crimes, is that fair?
Yes.
Or specifically using what you said?
Yes.
Now, when you came forward and spoke to Detective Thorpe, did you ask for anything other than immunity?
My sister's safety.
And are you referring to your sister Jeanette?
Yes.
Why were you concerned for Jeanette's safety back in 2014 when you came forward?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevant.
It was ruled subject to being tied up.
Go ahead.
I was concerned that my sister would get hurt.
Was she, at that time, was she dating one of the defendant's brothers?
Yes.
So she was still tied into the Rosario family?
Yes.
So, simple question, why did you wait so long to come forward?
I was scared.
Now, Ms. Gutierrez, you're aware that Juan Rosario was incarcerated in late 2013, right?
Yes.
And you wrote him letters when he was incarcerated, right?
Yes.
And you told him you loved him, didn't you?
Yes.
Did you in fact love Juan Rosario back in 2013?
Yes.
And did you help him that morning because you loved him?
Yes.
Was there another reason you helped him?
No.
So, what happened, well, let me phrase it this way. In the summer of 2014, did you see a news report about this case?
Yes.
Excuse me, about Juan Rosario?
Yes.
And you learned he went to prison, correct?
Correct.
And at that point, you felt comfortable coming forward, is that right?
Correct.
When you heard that news report, did you tell anyone prior to telling law enforcement?
My mother-in-law,
And what was her name?
Kimberly Cornell.
Shortly thereafter, did you receive a phone call from Detective Thorpe?
No.
How did your interaction begin with Detective Thorpe?
I called him.
Okay. And then you set up your interview with the immunity, is that fair?
I was subpoenaed.
Okay. They required you to come in.
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez, you said that you were afraid and that's why you didn't come forward. Did Juan Rosario personally and specifically threaten you about testifying about this incident?
Yes.
Do you remember how many times that occurred?
How many times?
How many times did he threaten you that you can recall?
It was before he got incarcerated.
Right? Where were you when that threat came?
We were in a hotel.
Do you remember what he said to you?
He said that I knew he would kill me if I said anything and he would hurt my sister.
Now, you've already told us what it was that Juan Rosario told you he did, to use his word, to the old lady, right?
Yes.
That morning, or shortly thereafter, did he tell you that the victim spoke to him?
Yes.
What did Juan Rosario say was the interaction between him and the victim in this case?
He said she said that he didn't have to do this.
And how did he react to that?
While he was sitting there, he said he was crying, and he said he didn't know why he was doing it, but she seen his face.
Can I have a moment, Judge?
Okay.
I'll have you say a question.
Cross.
Hi, John.
Mr. Whedon, I don't have any objection to you conducting examination from the table if you want.
I appreciate it. Okay.
All right.
Man, when did you arrive on that?
Like, just recently? Friday. Thursday, I'm sorry.
And
I'm sorry, it was Friday. It was Friday.
did you fly here?
Yes.
With whom did you fly?
Detective Thorpe and Detective Adams.
They came out and picked you up in Texas?
Yes.
Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to let you go brew another pot of the world's slowest coffee maker, and we'll bring you back in just a minute. Thanks.
Judge, may the witness step down while we're arguing over this?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the jurors to step out. Ms. Gutierrez, you're under oath, you're on the stand, so you can't talk to anybody about your testimony, but I need you to step out in the hallway, please. All right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We'll call you back in when we need you. And when I say anybody, that includes the attorneys, Ms. Gutierrez. Right. Can we all agree that yesterday everyone stipulated to the fact that Ms. Gutierrez is not in custody? Is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Whedon?
Yes.
With that in mind, Mr. Williams?
Your Honor, the state's issue with this entire line of questioning is that it leads to the inescapable conclusion that she is, in fact, she was released from a facility. Now, we understand that that's not quote-unquote custody, but I had to have somebody bring her here, as Your Honor put on the record. She was released to the custody of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. My issue with this line of questioning is that it's going to leave the jury with an improper belief about what the current status or her current status is. So I heard Mr. Whedon say that he wants to make the argument that she feels that Detective Thorpe or the Sheriff's Office or myself have control over her, use the word control. He can certainly ask the witness if she's been promised anything or if she's going to get a deal for anything or if anybody has spoken to her about her case. But of course we know that's not true. And so what we're doing is asking questions to leave the jury with a false impression. And that is what I'm objecting to.
Mr. Whedon, your response.
Judge, we can't try this case in a vacuum. She had use immunity for her statements back in June of 2014. She doesn't have immunity from prosecution. They sent the lead detective in this case to Texas to get her and fly her back. They didn't issue a subpoena. That's the means by which they secured her presence here today. I think I'm certainly allowed to go into the fact that she doesn't have transactional immunity. She doesn't have immunity from prosecution. And
what does the detectives having escorted her here to Florida have to do with that subject matter?
I mean, I've inquired of her what conversation she was with this detective, obviously, for a number of hours. I don't know how many hours yet. A number of hours, and whether she talked to him about this case, whether he talked to her about what kind of testimony she should be offering. So the fact that she was with him for that period of time, I should be able to inquire into the circumstances of the conversations that might have occurred. And whether in those conversations she was aware that she could be prosecuted for this offense.
All right. Those are certainly areas that Mr. Whedon is allowed to question the witness about. I understand what your concern is. He has a right to discuss with Ms. Gutierrez any conversations that may or may not have occurred between she and Detective Thorpe and whoever the other detective was. I already forgot his name. How would you propose he do that without,
All Mr. Whedon has to do is ask the question since last Thursday, have you spoken about this case with Detective Thorpe? Doesn't need to be in context of travel or who brought who where, because what I know is that Detective Thorpe recorded the conversation, the lack of conversation, all the way from the facility to the airport to make sure we did not have this issue. Because Mr. Whedon had made it clear that he was concerned about that. So the other thing we could do is he has to have a good faith belief that that occurred to even ask the question. So if we want to proffer this testimony, we can proffer the testimony outside the presence of the jury. My objection is to the reference to her travel, which is not relevant. I understand that he has wide latitude to cross-examine a witness, but there has to be a good faith basis for it, and it can't be leaving an improper impression with the jury, is the state's position.
I'm hearing that there's a recorded conversation with the detective and Ms. Gutierrez.
I could see that one coming. Did you tell him that the detective had recorded the conversation, or lack
No,
thereof?
I did not, because I haven't listened to it, and I don't think there's anything on it. The detective played the recording or had the recording the entire time to make sure there was no discussion whatsoever. And I'm confident that if we call him in here and have him testify, that's what he would say would happen.
I need to hear that, Judge. I need to hear this recording.
Is the detective here?
Should be here.
Does he have the recording with him?
That I do not know.
Do you know how long the recording is?
I would imagine it's multiple hours because he recorded all the way from the facility to the airport. It's not exculpatory, Your Honor. It's not Brady.
Did he record the flight?
I don't believe he was permitted to record on the flight.
I'm not saying it is exculpatory. I'm not saying it isn't exculpatory.
Yes, Your Honor.
However, it is a recorded conversation with the main witness in this case, and I don't know under what rule, and we're sort of getting off the topic right now, and I'm going to get
Yes.
back to the topic that we were on. And in fact, for record purposes, let me finish the discussion of the escort. Here's what I'm going to do. Mr. Whedon, she's not in custody. Everyone stipulated to that. You can certainly ask, did you have any conversations since last Friday? Have you had any is that when they had contact, was on Friday? Does anybody know?
I believe he arrived at the facility on Friday morning. They drove there on Friday and flew Friday night.
So you can certainly ask, since last Friday, have you had any conversations with Detective Thorpe about this case, or anything that you ask, but you need to get off the subject of her having been escorted to the state of Florida by these detectives, because that does certainly imply that she's in custody. After all, the parties stipulated that she wasn't out of custody. Now, is the state asking for a curative instruction, or do you, as to the comment that was made, or are you just asking me to cut it off at this point and let it go?
Just prohibiting it going forward. Your Honor.
Okay. No more mentioning escorting to the state of Florida. You can say, have you had any conversations since Friday with the detective, and that gives you plenty of latitude to ask about any contact or conversations that they've had. Now, moving on. Mr. Whedon, are you requesting a Richardson hearing on the tape?
Yes, I mean, it's hard to do that, not knowing what's in the tape, but...
Okay. He has a right to hear the tape. If you think I'm wrong and you have some rule or case law that says that I'm wrong about him having the right to hear the tape, you can certainly make that argument, but I don't know that the discovery is wide open in the state of Florida, and he's got a right to see or hear anything that has to do with the case, whether it helps, hurt, or is neutral.
I want to look at the rule, Your Honor, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
The reason is because
I'll look at it too.
Ms. Barrow pointed out that even with the wide latitude of discovery in the state of Florida, it has to lead to relevant information.
Well, the problem, Mr. Williams, and certainly we're all going to look at the rule, I'll give you some moments to think about this, but the problem becomes that there is no way of knowing whether the information is relevant or not without listening to the tape. And that decision can't be made by me, that I know of, or by the state. The defense has a right to listen to it and determine whether or not there's something relevant on it, so. But let's read the rule and get back to this.
How they can make an assertion is not.
Why don't you read the rule? Let me give me a minute to read the rule, okay? We're reading, for the record, it's Rule 3.220, subsection B, the prosecutor's discovery obligation, and it has multiple subsections to it. If you look at subsection 1B,
Your Honor, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to make you aware that Mr. Mario is from our office and he's working on the Elmo, so.
oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Frankly, I didn't even notice. Sort of focused. Y'all ready?
We are, Judge.
Mr. Williams?
Your Honor, I've read the rule, and specifically 1B is exceptionally broad. I understand that. Purposes of this hearing, the state's proposal is that Detective Thorpe come in and proffer what was said, if anything, during that trip, and he can just explain to the court and the defense out of the presence of the jury. What was done is my understanding that he has the recording with him, and I propose that we move forward with the testimony this morning, and if the defense wants to listen to it over the lunch hour, then they should be happy to do that. We'll make sure witnesses remain here in case they need to be recalled or addressed in some other fashion.
Here's the issue. Go ahead, Mr. Reed. Do you want to say something? Or?
Well, I'm sorry, Judge, I just don't want to rely upon a proffer by a law enforcement officer about what's in audio tape, and I don't know how long the tape is. I need to have a lunch. I don't need to be listening to tapes over my lunch hour. So I think the proper thing to do would be to recess. The state doesn't know what's in the tapes. It would be to recess and give me access to this, and so I could hear what these conversations were.
I'm going to finish Ms. Gutierrez's testimony this morning. The issue in the rule is incredibly broad, but in reading over the cases, I think it turns on what the word statement means, and statement generally means the person said something that is related to the case. However, I agree with Mr. Whedon that since no one has listened to it, we have no way of knowing what's on the tape. I have no reason to believe that Detective Thorpe is going to mislead the court or anyone else by testifying falsely and saying that there's nothing on the tape when there isn't anything on the tape. However, this is one of those things where you're just creating an appellate issue for no reason at all, because the easy thing to do is to let Mr. Whedon listen to the tape. That doesn't mean that he needs to listen to the tape right this second when Ms. Gutierrez is on the stand, because no witness will be released from here on in. They will all remain here. Mr. Whedon, I'm not aware of any reason that you can't eat and listen to a tape at the same time. The issue really is the length of the tape. Meaning you can eat lunch while you're listening to the tape. Is there something preventing you from doing that? You won't be the first lawyer to work through lunch. I'm certainly not the first judge that's had to work through lunch. You're not the first lawyer that had to work through lunch. You guys did it yesterday.
Well, this is a homicide case, Judge.
I understand it's a homicide case, but you can still eat lunch and listen to the tape. My question is, how long is the tape? Do we know? Can you step out in the hall and ask the detective, please?
I can.
Thanks.
That's right.
She won't be finished. Gee. Let's look at it.
How long is the tape?
2 hours in total.
So we're going to have an extra long lunch break while Mr. Whedon listens to the tape. And then if it becomes necessary to recall Gutierrez or any other witness, because there's something on the tape that has to be dealt with.
It's on the detective's phone. So,
That would be interesting. Does he have his charger with him?
I'm not sure. We'll sort that issue out.
He needs to.
Thank you.
Yeah, he needs to have his charger with him so that the phone doesn't die in the middle of all of this. I don't believe the rule mandates that.
I can get it to Cliff. Let's be risen.
Hold on one second. A judge is requesting your presence, so hold on. All right, so we clear on the Gutierrez ruling? We're going to bring back Ms. Gutierrez, put her on the stand. Mr. King is handling the issue with the phone and the...
That's
So,
my understanding, yes.
We'll work out the mechanics of listening to the tape over the lunch, the extremely extended lunch break, and we'll continue with testimony this morning. All right?
Your Honor, just some clarification about, so the objection was to me using the term, the word, the phrase, or the word escort?
No, the objection is to, you can't discuss the detectives being on a plane with her, escorting her here, or any implication that she was in the custody of the detectives. You can ask her, have you had any contact with the detective since Thursday or Friday? You had any conversations with him? What were those conversations about this case? Those questions you can ask, but anything that implies that they were on a plane with her, escorting her to the state of Florida, and implying that she's in custody is a violation of the stipulation that you entered into this morning, and it gives the jury an improper impression that Ms. Gutierrez is in custody. You stipulated she is not in custody. So you can ask, have you talked to the detective since Friday, but you don't need to discuss where it occurred because it's not relevant to
And I
anything.
said, after Lieutenant inquired, she voluntarily flew back from Texas with the detectives?
You can inquire if she voluntarily flew back from Texas, not with the detectives. Again, the mention of the detectives implies she's in custody. I'm not going to argue with you about this ruling, Mr. Whedon. No mention of the detectives escorting her back to Florida. You stipulated she's not in custody.
Just for the record, I didn't obviously need to make a record of this, Judge. And I think her exposure with these detectives, two detectives, for an extended period of time is something I should be able to inquire about. And
I didn't say you couldn't ask her how long a time she spent with the detective.
I just can't say she was on an airplane with them.
You can't say they escorted her back to the state of Florida, she was on an airplane with them, anything that implies that she was in custody.
Well, my intent would be to say, well, she flew back voluntarily with them. So clearly I'm
You
not
do not
implying-
need to mention that she flew back with them. That implies that she was in custody. You need to ask if she flew back to the state of Florida voluntarily, period. Then you can ask, and I've said this 4 times, I'm not going to say it again.
May I inquire whether she had contacted detectives in Texas?
Yes.
And I can inquire about the length of time she spent with the two detectives?
Yes.
Just not that she was on the airplane.
You can't ask any questions. Mr. Whedon, you're smart enough to know what the ruling is, okay? That's enough.
May I
Bring the
use
jury
restroom
back in,
before- May I
please.
use the restroom just before they come back?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
CF 525, the state of Florida versus Alexis Hernandez for an arraignment.
Right. Court is recalling the capias, ordering him released, bond reinstated, and his court dates are set as... All right. Will be placed on the May 11th pretrial docket, on May 17th trial case management, May 30th trial. Judge Kramer's going to do those, but yes. All right, let's bring the jury back in.
Judge, before we do that, can we bring the witness on the witness stand and have the court let her know what the ruling is, so that, I just don't want her volunteering something, thinking she's being asked something different, if that's okay.
Sure, no problem. Let's
Thank
bring
you.
Ms. Gutierrez back up. Welcome back, Ms. Gutierrez. Ms. Gutierrez, when Mr. Whedon continues with his questions, he is not, you do not need to mention that you were on a plane with these detectives or that you were escorted to the state of Florida. You understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Answer his questions truthfully, but don't get into those areas.
Okay.
Any further directions state's requesting?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, let's bring the jury back in. State recognized presence of the jury.
We do, Your Honor.
Defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, welcome back. You may continue, Mr. Whedon.
Ma'am, you've been here about close to a week now, is that correct?
Correct.
And over that week, how much time have you spent with Detective Thorpe?
I'm sorry?
During that period of time, how much time have you spent with Detective Thorpe?
I haven't spent any time with him.
None at all?
Just on the plane ride.
And did you see Detective Thorpe in Texas?
Yes.
Was he with another detective
Yes.
from Orlando?
Yes.
What was that detective's name?
Detective Adams.
Adams?
Yes.
Prior to today, when was the last time you talked to Detective Thorpe?
Friday.
And how many hours total since you saw him in Texas have you spent with him?
I'm sorry?
How many hours in total since you first saw him in Texas have you spent with him?
I haven't spent any time with him.
None at all?
No.
Yeah, Coach Judge? Did you discuss the case with him when you were in Texas?
No, sir.
Now, prior to June of 2014, you never met Detective Philip, correct?
Correct.
And you were aware that he was the detective in the case?
Yes.
And you never reached out to him for that 9-month period, did you?
No.
In June of 2014, where were you living?
And I was living in DeLand, Florida. DeLand, Florida.
How long did you live in?
About 9 months.
With whom were you living?
In June, I was living with my girlfriend at the time.
Were you living with your boyfriend also?
No, we had already broken up.
Different boyfriend from September 2013 to June 2014?
It was until May.
Sorry?
Just until May.
Who was that boyfriend?
He was my mother-in-law's son, Kyle Calhoun.
Did you have children with him?
Yes.
And how long did you live with him
Altogether or just in that period of time?
in that period of time?
About 8 months.
About 8 months?
Yes.
And during that time, Mr. Rosario was incarcerated in county jail?
Yes.
And you visited county jail?
Yes.
You weren't afraid of him then, were you?
No.
In fact, you wrote him love letters,
Yes.
told him you wanted to marry him,
Yes.
told him you wanted to have children.
I don't recall saying that.
She also wrote a letter indicating you were mad at
Objection.
him.
Improper impeachment.
Sustained, rephrase?
Were you also angry with him about his relationship with his wife?
No.
Did you write him anything with regards to that?
I don't recall writing him about his wife.
And you don't recall expressing any anger towards him about his wife?
I don't recall.
What do you?
And I'm going to withdraw that question.
All right.
You were aware at the time that he was in jail, though, that he was communicating with his with his wife, correct?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
You were aware when he was in jail that he was communicating with his wife.
Yes.
You weren't happy about that, were you?
I was okay with it.
You were jealous, though, weren't you?
No, I was not jealous.
Were you also aware that he cheated on you?
Yes.
Okay, did that bother you?
Yes, it bothered me.
And you referenced that in your letters to him as well, correct?
Correct.
So that time that he was in jail, you really weren't afraid of him, were you?
I was nervous about him.
You were nervous but not afraid, correct?
I feel like I was afraid, but I wouldn't put it in these exact words. I was scared.
When you told him you wanted to marry him, were you afraid?
Not at that time.
He was in jail, correct?
Yes.
And that's the same time period we're talking about, right?
And he was in jail for a while.
Well, you wrote to him through October, didn't you?
Yes.
And actually into December, you maintained contact with him, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And during that time, you expressed your love towards him.
Yes.
And during that time, you learned that he was still communicating with his wife, right?
She wrote me, yes.
And that he had plans to get back with his wife.
I had no idea about that.
But you had that impression, didn't you?
No, sir.
You were aware that she had some money?
I'm sorry?
Were you aware that his wife had money?
No.
You never referenced that to him?
No.
But during that time period, you got back with your children's father?
Yes.
And that's the real reason you moved away from contact with Mr. Rosario, right?
I moved away because I was scared of him.
But you never expressed that in any letters to him, did you?
No.
And you never expressed that to anybody else during that time, did you?
Yes, I did.
In writing?
No.
Any kind of documentation?
No.
Now, you indicated you contacted told him you wanted immunity,
Yes,
right? You didn't want to be prosecuted for anything that you had done.
correct.
And you indicated that you wanted, you were concerned for your sister,
Yes,
Jeanette?
yes.
She was, when did you move out of the Rosario home?
October.
2013?
Yes,
Okay. And was your sister Jeanette living with Raymond at that time?
yes.
Then she moved into the home, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
And away from Raymond?
No.
'Cause Raymond wasn't living in the home, was he?
Yes, he was.
When isn't it true though that she moved into the bedroom that you had occupied,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And she lived in that home all the way through June of 2014, right, after you moved out?
Yes,
And she's maintained a relationship with the Rosario family, hasn't she?
yes.
Now, the drug addiction that you referenced, the state asked you what kind of drugs that you did, right?
They didn't ask me what I did. They said, what was I taking?
Okay. Well, what kind of drugs were you taking?
I was taking pain pills.
And you also taking Adderall.
Yes, I took Adderall at one point.
Okay. Well, in fact, the charge in Texas.
Objection. We approach.
Yeah, please, the attorney. Go ahead, Mr. Weedle.
I mean, drug addiction isn't just for opiates, right?
Correct.
What other drugs has your addiction been involved with?
Just marijuana.
And Adderall as well?
I was prescribed Adderall for my ADHD, sir.
Well, the charge in Texas wasn't prescribed Adderall, was it?
No,
Are you on medication today?
no.
And your addiction goes back beyond your injuries, doesn't it?
No.
So what year was your injuries?
2005?
Is it your testimony that you began using drugs in 2005?
Yes.
You'd never using drugs before that?
No.
Have you also submitted to mental health treatment?
Objection.
No, sir.
She answered it, so I'm going to overrule, but Please return to the stand. Continue with your questioning, Mr. Whedon.
Now, you're a convicted felon, correct?
Correct.
And you're on probation?
Correct.
How long is your probation?
4 years.
You also have a suspended jail sentence, don't you?
No, sir.
You have a suspended 2-year sentence, correct?
It's not suspended.
Are you served a 2-year jail sentence?
No, I'm doing a program.
May I approach the witness, Judge?
You may. You need to show the state the document. Folks, I need to take a quick break.
Here's accident.
Ms. Gutierrez, I'm going to need you to step out in the hallway, please. You're under oath. Don't talk to anyone, including the lawyers, all right?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm going to step off the bench for a minute.